make a start for the afternoon slot. Great to see that lots of you have stayed. Let's see if it happens after the next break. We're back online again. Sorry for the few minutes delay on getting back online. My name's Michaela Nuttall. I'm a nurse, and I'm sure Nick needs no introduction as you were here already. But what I want to be able to do before we start is just talk about evaluations, certificates, slides, handouts, because we've had lots of comments about that on the chat online, and I'm sure you guys are keen too. At the end of this session, an email will come out with exactly what to do. We're using a platform now called Medal. I don't know if anybody come across Medal yet? No? You're going to learn to love it. It was made by a cardiothoracic surgeon in lockdown from Belfast. It's an open access platform, so free for organisations. I'm on no commission, just to let you know. Free for organisations, free for healthcare professionals, and it is absolutely brilliant to use. So you'll go through, do your evaluation. If you're not using a recognised NHS email address, it just gives you have to verify it. But all the slides that are available get loaded up on there. You can pick them up whenever you want to. We might have to catch up, so you have to toggle catch up content. You create your own certificate in there by putting your name on it. It is just brilliant. And so if you ever do another session for Medal, you've already got that set up, and your certificates will always stay in the same place, which is awfully handy. It was designed by a doctor for doing revalidation and stuff, so brilliant. So I'm going to hand over to Nick now, who's going to start us off with the session. I just wanted to make sure we did evaluations before we forgot.
So hopefully this is working. So obviously welcome back from lunch. Hope you are all well fed and agreeably drunk. So a packed afternoon, and first I'd like to introduce Harsha, who is a GP in Hertfordshire, and she and I have been chatting for quite a while because of long COVID, because she has had the pleasure of running her local lung COVID service, and we've been writing various bits and pieces as well. So Harsha, perhaps you could come up and give us your insights into the nightmare of running primary care long COVID.
Thanks. Hi everyone. So my name's Harsha, and I'm a GP lead in the East and North Hertfordshire COVID Rehab Assessment Clinic. And just to say, like, it's a small sector of Hertfordshire because it's actually divided up into 3 bits, and so we're one clinic in that. And I've been asked to talk a bit about our pathway and how it developed. So I just wanted to start by saying our service, we started developing our service really early on, back in May 2020. Originally it was designed, but we thought we'd need some sort of rehab pathway for the patients going into ITU with COVID. And then very quickly we adapted it to manage some of the community-based long COVID patients as well. So our service, we see anyone and everyone with post-COVID complications, whether they've been in ITU, hospital, or the community, and our service works across the primary care, secondary care, and community care interface. So this is our team, and it just kind of gives you an idea. Now, all long COVID clinics have been done differently. Everyone's sort of done them in different ways, and I'm just going to focus on ours today. And that kind of gives you an idea of the team. So a lot of the services we used were existing services already, and we sort of tapped into those. But we did commission a few other people. So the rehab coordinator, and I'll talk about her role a bit later, that was commissioned. Occupational therapy, we did commission a clinical psychologist because we thought lots of patients would be suffering from PTSD post-COVID. And of course, my role as well came into there. We also worked very closely with colleagues in secondary care, social care, and the voluntary sector. And that's really evolved. We did start that from the beginning, and it's sort of grown and grown and grown, and it's been hugely important in the development of pathway and care that we offer. And the main aim that we've always tried to do is to provide coordinated, holistic care involving both medical assessment and rehabilitation. And that is the key. I think if you just do the medical side, patients don't really get better. And if you just rehab them, they don't get better either. So it really is that combination of both that works much better. So these are just some stats from our service, and it will just give you a sort of general overview. I'm not sure if that's very clear, but you can see the referrals. So we started off about 40 to 50 referrals a month is what we started with originally. Massive spike in March 2021 where referrals tripled. That was after the Kent strain, I think. And then it came down and we kind of thought, oh, we've been vaccinated and maybe it will all go away, but that hasn't been the case. And actually we seem to have sort of stabilised around about 60 referrals a month. So we're still getting that now. Predominantly, you can see 78.7% of white British that we're seeing compared to sort of 22% of other ethnic groups. 66% female compared to 34% males. And interestingly, 91.4% of our referrals are all coming from primary care. So these are not coming from hospital. You know, majority of these are community-based non-COVID patients. And just to give you an idea of kind of where some of these patients are going, 45, almost 46% IC. So it does really go to show how important that medical aspect in this is. And then the rest sort of go down in order, 36% to primary rehab, 20% to chronic fatigue, and then mental health, and then other services. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where some of those patients are being seen. However, I think it's really important to say this. There have been huge challenges. Like when we first set this up back in May, there was literally nothing. It was new illness, lots of symptoms. We had no idea how we were going to manage it. We didn't know what to do. There was really limited guidance. There was no evidence. Really, really challenging. And we had to really kind of think in a very different way to do this. And even now, I would say the optimum treatment and pathway design still isn't clear. Lots of people are doing very different things. Funding has been a really big issue. Like up until now, we weren't really, even now actually, we've been told we've got funding till next year. We don't know what's happening after that. It's been really tricky because that massively affects recruitment into particularly community teams. And we struggled to recruit occupational therapists, primary rehab, because nobody wants short-term roles. And then vocational rehab, massive area. Patients are so sick, they present with so many different symptoms. How do we get them back to work? What's the best way? We still don't have some of those answers. So it has been really, really hard. But on the flip side, I think it's really important to say that that uncertainty has, and actually COVID in itself has brought about lots of good changes as well. That shared uncertainty has made us work in a really different way. We've had to work a bit more collaboratively and in a more integrated way. We've had to think creatively, innovatively, laterally, and really think outside the box in trying how to manage some of these patients. And I think that particularly applies to POTS. I think, 2 years ago, we didn't even know what POTS was. We had no idea, and we've had to learn that, and we've had to put that into our pathway and adapt it accordingly. And I think it's really important. And I think as a result of that, what we have now is a pathway that's quite dynamic, it's quite flexible, it's quite integrated, and it has adapted according to patient need, which I think is really crucial. So what have we learned? As I said before, that multidisciplinary approach, offering tailored medical assessment, investigations, treatment, and rehab is essential. It isn't one size fits all. I think lots of people have said that, and I will reiterate that. Patients present with similar symptoms, but actually the management can be quite different. So quite important to remember that. A rehab coordinator, this was someone we commissioned really early on, and she has been absolutely critical to our pathway. So she's a specialised occupational therapist, and what she does is she triages all of those referrals coming in initially and develops almost like a personalised package of care for them. So, refers them across the pathway, coordinates their care and keeps tabs on them essentially. My role actually has proved to be quite valuable. So I do that medical assessment. I can offer a much more sort of holistic view. I can organise further investigations, and I'm that sort of link into secondary care as well, if they need further investigations. But like people have said, what you almost need is you need one, a few people holding it. You need someone that has an overall, has overall care of that patient, who can, because lots of them will go into different specialties. I may have some going into ENT, cardiology, respiratory, and you need someone to be able to oversee all of that and then put it all together at the end to kind of then decide on a plan of where to go next. So it's really been quite important. We use a questionnaire. We use the Yorkshire Screening Questionnaire, but you can use, there's a few out there. And again, because there are so many symptoms, it's just a good way of being able to document symptoms, their severity, and sort of, you know, address and document their functional disability as a result of it. And one of the things that I do, which is what we all probably do in long COVID clinics, is look at what they were like pre-COVID and what are they like now. What can they not do now that they could do before? And that's hugely important, because that's how, you know, that's where you sort of measure that recovery. The multidisciplinary team meeting, I cannot really say how important this is. We have a weekly one with all our community teams. I have another separate one with some of the my secondary care colleagues as well, and critical care. And actually, this is where we do lots of our learning. And I think that shared clinical decision making, because we don't have all the answers, we don't always know what to do. And I think working together and sharing that is hugely important. It can help with learning, with reflection. And actually in ours, we use that time to also look at our service improvement and innovation. What's working? What isn't? What do we need to change? Have the symptoms changed? Like, we know that different variants have caused different long-term problems, and we're going to have to adapt our pathways according to that. And I think lastly, again, this has been mentioned before, but, you know, considering the emotional, psychological, financial impacts of COVID-19, they have been huge. You know, people have lost their jobs, they haven't been able to work. So there's quite a few people that I know have got divorced and then have left home, really struggling. So it isn't just the medical bits, it's all of it. And unless you address it all together, that recovery doesn't really happen. The other thing that we found was, I should have put this a bit earlier, but a slow stream rehabilitation approach is better. Now, when we first went live, we were so delighted with all the services that we could offer. You know, we had dietitians and primary rehab and fatigue, and, you know, they came in with all these symptoms, and we were like, brilliant, we'll just direct you here, 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 here. And we thought that would be the solution. And, you know, a few months down the line, we came to review them, and gosh, they really were not better. They had no idea who they were talking to. They were getting different conflicting advice, and it didn't really work. So there is this pressure to kind of get them in and get them out really quickly, but that doesn't work. You've got to slow it down, and you've almost got to do one thing at a time. So we kind of do primary rehab and a medical review first of all. Once they've had that, we then think about very carefully, and we've learned to streamline now, what is it they really need? Is it more fatigue management? Is it more mental health? Is it more, you know, speech and language, for example? And it's really about tailoring it and giving the right care for the right problems. So this is just a really brief summary of like how our team works, because obviously it's not the same in every area. I did want to mention ENT and speech and language. You know, I think speech and language weren't in the original NICE guidance, I don't think, as sort of recommended as part of the MPT, but they're really crucial. In the first wave, lots and lots of people with voice issues, swallow issues. We didn't really know how to manage that, so we have worked together, and now we have a pathway in place with ENT as well, and that works really, really well. And, you know, together with the voice, you get breathing issues. So actually, pulmonary rehab and speech and language are now working more collaboratively as well to kind of treat these patients. We've obviously got physio, we've got occupational therapy. They're able to do cognitive assessments, manage fatigue, and help with return to work. And we're really lucky to have a chronic fatigue team that we can refer into, and they do that more sort of severe fatigue management, advice on pacing, sleep issues, and chronic pain. We're very much linked in with secondary care, so I work really closely with my respiratory care colleagues in their COVID recovery clinic. And we almost sort of bounce, you know, like I will have a patient, I'll see them, I refer in, they get their test, they come back to me, and then they can complete their rehab journey. So it really benefits everyone. I think it benefits us as clinicians and really benefits the patients as well. I'm just going to give a really, you know, briefing of a case study. This will just demonstrate how our pathway works. So this was a 64-year-old lady who came in really early, actually. She was a healthcare worker. She got COVID in March 2020. Previously fairly fit and well. The only thing she'd really had was an unprovoked PE, and that was back in 2016. And she'd had lots and lots of investigations, and they didn't really find the cause. And if you look down the bottom, you can see some of her ongoing symptoms, lots of symptoms, which is really what we see. Breathlessness, cough, dizziness, palpitations, anxiety, fatigue, all of these things all together. So we discussed her really early at our MDT, and actually our community respiratory team went out to see her at home because she was so poorly and found she was desaturating on exertion. So we managed to get her into the COVID recovery clinic really quickly. She had some lung function tests, the CTPA, they were normal. Because of her palpitations and dizziness, we referred her into cardiology. They did some of their investigations, which all came back normal as well. So after that, she came back in. I mean, she was already part of our pathway anyway, and we were reviewing her regularly, but we were sort of waiting for those medical components to be done first. We discussed her again at the MDT and looked at some of her ongoing symptoms. The breathlessness, we referred into pulmonary rehab, and they did loads and loads of work around the breathing. And for the biggest thing for her was actually anxiety. She was really stressed. She was quite traumatized by everything she'd been through. And she had something called some dynamic mind therapy through IAPS. She found it really helpful and made a massive difference. And then towards the end, we referred into chronic fatigue. I actually spoke to her about a month ago, and I wouldn't say she's fully better, but she's loads better than what she was before. She has gone back to work. But she's had to do reduced hours, and she's considering early retirement. But you know, from the beginning where she literally couldn't leave her house, she couldn't do anything, she's come a really long way. And I think focusing even on those small positives is so important. And what we try to do in our pathway is give patients tools, give them back strategies and ways to help themselves to recognize what's going on. We know that if they get COVID again, for example, it triggers all their symptoms to come back, and they just need to recall everything they've learned, and and it just gives them a bit more empowerment and control over their symptoms. So in terms of recovery, it's really slow. As I said, I am seeing recovery. I did get some data this morning. So in our clinic, I think we have discharged 304 patients, which is about 34%. Are they all better? No, not really. Some of them are, loads of them are better than what they were when they came in, but many are not really back to their sort of baseline. And what we found, and I think it's what we've all found in non-COVID clinics, that yes, the medical parts are really important, and once they have been ruled out, it really is the lifestyle measures that make the biggest difference in everything. So what we know that, this is a remitting, relapsing illness. Symptoms will come and go, and there will be unique triggers in each person which causes a relapse. So for some, it might be overdoing it on exercise. For others, it's trying to go back to work too soon. So they have to work out, what we have to do is work out what it is that's their trigger, and then try to get them to address it. So stress, poor sleep, all of those things, can really affect someone's level and make them feel very, basically bring on a relapse of their symptoms. So addressing this is really important. And if you've got someone with fatigue and brain fog, if they're not sleeping, that's huge. You've got to address the sleep first. And if they're not sleeping because they're in pain, you need to address that. So you have to break that sort of cycle, which allows recovery. The big thing that we noticed at the beginning with these sort of remitting, relapsing symptoms was the fact that patients, they always describe this, they have good days and they have bad days. When they have a good day, they feel really good and they want to do more, they want to push themselves, they want to go back to how they were, so they do a bit more, and then all their symptoms come back and they feel really terrible, and they relapse and crash, and that has significant impacts on their mood, on everything. So, some of the strategies that we do is about breaking that, and that's what pacing is all about, is trying to break that cycle and give them strategies to balance their activity and their rest in order to avoid an exacerbation of their symptoms. Okay, so obviously a flexible patient-centered return to work is also really important. So just a quick thing on future plans. I've said some of the areas that we've struggled with. So what we're trying to do now actually is work with public health, and we're looking at working with we work quite closely with Hearts Help, who deal with social prescribers, vocational rehab. So we're working with the Health Protection Board, and what we're trying to do is give advice and guidance and education to let employers, social prescribers, people who deliver physical activity, to let them help their patients, because I think without their knowledge, they're not really going to be able to do that. So that's some stuff that we're working on at the minute. And I think just in summary, I hope that just gives you a really brief summary of how our pathway works and the real benefit of an integrated, holistic pathway. I really hope that we get to continue doing this work. I think some of the things that we've learned, I think this has been really good things that come out of COVID. And I hope that we can use what we've learned to apply to other conditions as well.